Welcome again to The Actor's Vow. This is Denise Borrattepat, and I'm so happy to have you here. We have not talked to each other since quite literally last year, and it's because I went to a last-minute New York City trip. It was incredible. I had not been to New York since I graduated 3 years ago, so it was so beautiful to go back to my roots, watch Broadway shows. I got the chance to see 4 different Broadway shows. The first one was Company by Stephen Sondheim, of course, after, the loss of Sondheim, which was so sad for the whole theater community. I had to see that one first. And then I got to see Hugh Jackman and Sutton Foster in The Music Man. I said it before. I've seen Hugh Jackman before on Broadway. The last time he was there doing The River by Jess Butterworth. That was a straight play. And I have never been so impressed with a live performance. I have seen many incredible performers on Broadway, Denzel Washington being one of them, but nobody has truly impacted me like Hugh Jackman has. And now seeing The Music Man this time, it just confirms what I always thought. His energy on stage is just immaculate. He has such a control of his voice, his body, his energy. He knows how to lead a whole company and how to lead a play. Every time he's on stage, you cannot take your eyes off of him. It is incredible to see this man on a stage. When I think of talent, live talent, he comes to mind. So if you ever get the chance to see Hugh Jackman live, you should definitely do it. It's completely worth it. I was 2 hours in the cold to get those tickets, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. After The Music Man, we went to see Moulin Rouge. I thought Moulin Rouge was very spectacle-like. I thought it was amazing. I think it's one of those musicals that if you have a family member that they don't like theater, you should bring them there. It's one of those shows that no matter who watches it will be entertained. The costumes are amazing. The set is amazing. It is a complete show. Now, it's not my favorite thing. For me, I like shows that are not so much about, the flouritures and everything being pretty and more about straight acting. But it was very enjoyable. And then I went to see Phantom of the Opera, which was my 6th time seeing it live. I love Phantom of the Opera. It's a classic, so I was very happy to see it again. I do think, though, that after all these years, it needs some kind of redirection. Not making it contemporary, because the Phantom of the Opera is beautiful the way it is, but definitely the way that it's directed and the way the set is built and everything. It's very much like it's been all these years, and I do think that there could be some changes that would bring younger audiences into the musical theater scene, especially for the Phantom of the Opera that has been the longest running show on Broadway, which is incredible. But enough about that. The trip in New York City was amazing, but today I have an incredible guest for you. Her name is Sara Koestner, and she was an actress for more than 20 years, so she's a very experienced actress, and then she transitioned into being a personal coach. Not just a personal coach, and not a coach for acting, but a transformational coach. And what is a transformational coach? Well, Sara helps you get over or get through your anxiety and your fears and all those things that might be stopping you from becoming the best self that you can be. And she helps you with self-trust and confidence so you can feel empowered. Now, she doesn't just help actors, but I do think that this is very important for actors. I think we all can relate to this, right? Audition anxiety, not believing in us, imposter syndrome, believing that we are not good enough. So that is what Sara and I are going to be talking about today. I will let her explain everything. So let's give a warm welcome to Sara to The Actor's Vow. Welcome, Sara, to The Actor's Vow podcast. It's so great to have you here today.
Yeah, it's great to see you and be with you. Thanks so much for having me on.
Of course, I love that we're going to be talking about mindset. That's one of my favorite things to talk about for actors. But I know that you were an actress before you became a coach. So my first question for you is, what made you want to become an actor?
Well, if we go like way back, to when I was like 4 or 5 years old. I had an experience where my grandmother, I was so lucky. I grew up right outside of New York City, and she would take me to see shows in the city when I was a little girl. And the first Broadway show that she ever took me to see was Annie.
Mm-hmm.
And when we went to Annie, I was dressed in the Annie red dress. And afterwards, we went to the stage door. And the little girl who was playing Annie at the time saw me and pointed to me and said, "Look, Mom, there's the real Annie."
Wow.
And so in that moment, it was like, you know, the skies opened and like the sun kind of put a beam of light down on my forehead. And I was like, oh my God, this little girl is recognizing me as the real Annie, right? And so that kind of planted a seed in my little 4 or 5 year old mind that I wanted to be on stage. I wanted to be recognized in that way and seen in that way. And I was someone who really struggled with shyness actually as a kid. But I was also really drawn to the theater. And I took a lot of acting classes when I was a kid, and I found that that was the place where I really felt like I belonged.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't feel like I belonged really any other place, you know, but once I was in that community of other kids who were like me, it was this feeling of deep belonging that I didn't get anywhere else.
I see. And did your parents support you, your family?
Um, in, in their way, listen, they did the best they could. My father is a civil engineer. And I think that, well, I know that he wished that I followed in his engineering footsteps, but that is just so beyond, just so outside of my skill set. And I think that my mother, you know, both my parents were supportive of me, but I think that they were also, you know, rightly concerned. The life of
Right.
an actor is really hard. And I think that they knew that I was sensitive, and they were concerned that it would be not the healthiest choice for me.
Right.
Maybe.
I understand. And that's a lot already, that they maybe had their issues with it, but they allowed you to do it and they kind of supported you. So that's a lot.
100%. You know, I got 2 degrees in acting, my undergraduate degree, which they paid for, and my graduate degree, which they didn't pay for, but they, you know, supported me pursuing. So
yeah, and that's amazing. Yeah. And I know that lots of people listening will love that, because a lot of us don't have that, right? Like there's so many people whose parents are like, no, you just cannot be an actor and that's it. So it's good that you had that support, because it's very important to have an emotional support when you take that path. Okay, so somewhere along the line of becoming an actor, and you did acting for like 20 years, right?
Yeah, about that. I think my last acting job I took when I was maybe 36 or 37. Yeah, and I, you know, started in college. Well, started like really pursuing it seriously when I was 18. So yeah, about 20 years.
Right. Okay. So then when you turn like 36, 37, is that when you decided to become a transformational coach? And how did that happen?
Yeah. No. So at the age of 30, I decided that I didn't want to just be an actor. And so I started a process of apprenticing with a former teacher of mine at NYU grad school, and learning how to teach the voice technique that he created.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And so I shadowed with him for a couple years, and then I started teaching acting and voice. And I still teach voice. I'm an adjunct professor at Montclair State University in their BFA program, and I love it. I love that, you know, it really keeps me connected with students, and I love teaching, and I love keeping my hands in that world. And it was really through working with another coach that when I was sort of in this place of knowing that I actually didn't think that I wanted to teach full time and enjoying it, but then wasn't sure what else I wanted to do. And the desire to act was really falling away.
Mm.
Um, and so just through a lot of reflection and some encouragement from another coach, a lot of encouragement from another coach, I decided to take that leap and pursue that path.
Okay, I see. So I want to talk more about that because you're a transformational coach. I haven't heard a lot about what that entails.
Mm.
So for those of the people listening, what is exactly your job and how do you help people?
Yeah, great question. So, how I see my job as a coach is that I don't have the answers. You have the answers. You, the client, have the answers. My job is to ask you the right questions so that you're able to get underneath any anxiety or fear or inner critic, voices of doubt, right? All that kind of mind chatter
Mm-hmm.
that gets in the way so that you can actually hear the voice of your highest self.
Okay. And how is that different, for example, from therapy?
Mm. Yeah, so that's a great question. So it's a different modality, and therapy is wonderful. I've been to therapy, I continue to go to therapy. Um, but therapy tends to be focused more on the past and where
Mm.
you've been.
Mm.
And coaching is more focused on the present and where you want to go.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. So
So,
kind of building a plan for
mhm,
our future
yeah.
goals and
So while we might reflect on the past, and the past might come up and often does come up in coaching, um, it's in service of where do you want to go.
hmm. Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I see that. Okay. So I saw you just talked about you were a sensitive kid, you said, and I've
Mm,
seen that in your description as a coach, you talk about people who are highly sensitive.
mm,
And to be honest, reading that, like my first reaction was like that, those words, right? Like we grow up with those words kind of being an insult, like you're
yeah.
highly sensitive. And so seeing that you use those words, I was like, oh no, because I am highly sensitive. And when I get called that, it kind of like offends me. And I realized
Mm,
that just, the programming that we have, because that's how we grow up. So,
yeah.
so what do those words mean to you?
Hmm.
And why do you use them so much in your coaching?
Okay. So the term highly sensitive person was actually coined by a woman named Dr. Elaine Aron,
Mm-hmm.
who, through her research, found that roughly 20% of the population is what she would call highly sensitive, which means that you're more easily affected by stimulus, right? We could think of there's three different types of people in the world. There's dandelions. Dandelions are weeds, right? They can thrive under any circumstances, right? Dandelions grow up from a crack in the sidewalk and bloom, right? No problem. So some people are dandelions, right? Those are the least sensitive people among us. And then there are tulips, right? And tulips are, require a good amount of light and a good amount of water, right, in order to bloom and to
Mm-hmm.
thrive. So they're sort of moderately sensitive. And that's where a lot of the population lives. And then there's orchids, right? And orchids require just the right amount of water, just the right amount of light, just the right humidity, just the right temperature, right? In
Hmm.
order to thrive. But when they thrive, they're absolutely beautiful,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so that's sort of the most highly sensitive among us are
Mm.
are the orchids.
I like that. I like that analogy. And so then my question further is, I feel like so many artists, creatives, not just actors, are highly sensitive. And that's what makes us create art, because we experience the world in such big emotions, right? So how do we learn in a society that tells us that that's bad to be highly sensitive, to embrace
Mm-hmm.
our gift?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that one of the keys to that is in not having your identity as a person wrapped up in what you do.
Mm,
So, for example, to say, I am an actor, right, as opposed to, I am someone who acts, right?
right,
Acting is a job, right? It's not your entire identity. And
right.
when it becomes your entire identity, especially when you're a highly sensitive person, that's when problems can arise. Because what happens when you have 6 months or a year of not getting an acting job? Then who are you?
Right.
Right. And then another piece of it, I think, is we can become so focused on what our primary creative outlet is and our primary creative pursuit, right? um like, so if you're an actor, it's like you're always taking the acting classes and going to every single audition and networking and blah blah blah, and it's like all of your energy is going into that one thing, and there are benefits to that,
Mm-hmm.
but there are also drawbacks
Mm-hmm.
if that is your only outlet for creative expression, because it's
Right.
especially with acting, it's relying on someone else to tell you, yes, you can do the thing,
Yes.
right? It's not so
Absolutely.
satisfying to do monologues in your room by yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I
Right.
think this is a concept that a lot of us have experienced during the pandemic. I know for
Yeah.
me, that's been the case. I had like a crisis, right? Because I've been acting also since I was a child. And to me, it was like, whoa, this is the first time ever I'm not acting. Who am
Mhm.
I? And finding
Yeah,
yourself and other ways in which you are creative. Because usually people who are creative in one aspect are creative in others. So,
100%, right? And so when we have those dry spells in our primary creative expression, it can be really helpful to like get out your paints or your markers or your pencils, write a poem, do a painting, right?
mhm.
Do something that is different from your usual mode of creative expression.
Yeah. And let's say that you are a person who's very creative and suddenly you're experiencing a block, because that's a question I get all the time, right? Like I love being creative, painting, being an actor, but I'm just not
Mhm.
feeling it now. I don't know what to do. Do you have
Mhm.
any tips on how to get out of that?
Yeah. So feeling follows action
Hmm.
as opposed to action following feeling,
Right.
right? So we're not going to feel inspired all the time. I wish that we were, right? But when you're not feeling creative, taking out your painting, right? Taking out your paints and your paper and your brushes and all your instruments and just doing it anyway and allowing it to be, pardon my French, but allowing it to be shit,
Hmm.
right? And
Right.
just sort of
Right.
pushing through that, right? Because
Right.
otherwise, what tends to happen is sort of like this wall of, oh, I can't do the thing because I'm not feeling it, gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right. Right. That absolutely makes sense. And I feel like that's not just in creativity. Like I experience that with the gym, for example. Like I don't want to go, but if I force myself, then I feel so good once I'm there and I'm done.
100%. It's the same thing. The hardest part about going to the gym is going to the gym,
Yes,
right?
yes.
That there's a saying, it's like the heaviest weight that you lift at the gym is the front door.
I never heard that. Yes, but it's true for sure.
Yeah.
And then you know that it's gonna be worth it. And with creativity, it's definitely the same. With writing, it's the same. Like if I don't feel inspired on how to write, maybe reading will help you get some inspiration. I love the quote that says you cannot kill talent, but you can starve it through ignorance. And this is the idea that like if you don't have anything to say, if you don't keep learning and educating yourself, you won't have anything to say to others.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Yeah, I love that too. And oftentimes I think when we're feeling creatively dry, that we need to go do something else, right?
mhm.
We need to take a class, or we need to travel, or we need to do a different creative expression, right? If painting is your primary creative expression, maybe then you go take an improv class,
Yeah, yeah,
right? To shake things up.
yeah. And I love that because as actors, we represent people, all kinds of
Mm,
people, all kind of human experiences. So how can we do that if we don't experience those ourselves? So many
right.
times actors are told you have to go to all these acting classes, and it's great. But I do think that we have to experience so much more than just that to be a great actor.
Yes. Yes, that was something my acting teacher in graduate school was really big on. He's like, you cannot be an actor and not know history, not know art, and not be a prolific reader, right?
Hmm.
That's it. You can't be so myopic in
Absolutely.
your focus.
Yeah, yeah.
It won't be interesting.
Absolutely. And then with this block, I want to take it a little further. This is a question that was posed to me a few weeks ago, and I really struggled to answer. So I wanted to know your opinion. Somebody asked me, well, I've had a block for a very long time. How do I know it's a block or the time for me to give up
Mm,
acting and move to something else?
mm,
What do you
yeah.
think about that? How did you know, for example, for you, that it was time to move to something else?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So whenever I think it's important to let go of the idea of there being a right or wrong choice.
Hmm.
So often we get caught up in a binary between this is the right choice and this is the wrong choice.
Hmm.
And instead, to frame whenever you're coming to a big fork in the road, to frame it as what is the most loving choice for
Hmm.
me right now? What feels loving? Does it feel loving to get myself back out there into auditioning in that whole world? Or does it feel loving for me to take a break, to take a really conscious break and explore some other things, right?
Right.
And to remind ourselves that we can't make a wrong choice, that whatever choice we make, as long as it's really coming from a loving place, is going to lead to learning,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So, this person might take a break, and then through this break, they might realize, oh, wow, like I learned this about myself through this break. And now I feel like my inner waters are full again, and I want to get re-engaged with acting, right? Or I took this break and now, oh my God, I'm following my curiosity about this, and I'm so inspired about this new world that I'm exploring.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I like the idea of what feels more loving.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with the right or wrong. To me personally, what I ask myself is what feels more joyful right now, too? Like what gives me joy? Because
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be doing something that doesn't make me happy. But also, I guess what the next question could be for somebody in that is, well, sometimes you just have to push yourself. Sometimes pushing yourself to the uncomfortable leads to great things too, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
stepping out of your comfort zone as an actor. So what would be the difference between I'm stepping out of my comfort zone and pushing through something that might not be great now for a greater good than, well, this doesn't feel loving right now, so I'm going to something else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that right, there's there's times when we're afraid to do
Mm.
things, but we really want to do them, right? And then there's other times where we're just not feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
And those generally feel different in your body, right? So I would encourage this person to get clear on what what the sensations in their body feel like
Mm-hmm.
when they think about doing this thing. Right? Is it butterflies in the stomach? That might be telling you something different than if it's a tightness in your chest,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Right. Um, does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. That makes
Yeah.
sense. And I guess that leads to the next thing I'd like to talk about, which is listening to our inner voice. It's totally
Mm.
related to that. But I do think that one of the things actors struggle the most is the overthinking, the constant being in your head when you're acting, but not just acting, like in your career in general. So how do you get to that place of, well, I'm listening to myself, I know what I want, and I'm not just overthinking everything? Do you
Mm-hmm.
have any tips?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so common, right? With
Yes.
actors and with artists. But I think it's really part of it is recognizing that as actors, you're put in a really challenging position because
Mm.
there is just so little that most actors can control,
Yes. Yes.
right? Just so much of it is out of your control. Like you can go in and give a fantastic audition and not get the part,
Yeah.
right? And so just to recognize that this in particular, like the pursuit of being an actor, is really a deeply spiritual pursuit in terms of it is constantly asking you to surrender.
Mm.
And underneath sort of all the storylines, all the what ifs, what if I don't get this part? What if this agent doesn't like me? What if I said the wrong thing at that party last week to that casting director, right? Is are these core fears, right? And the core fears that I think are probably most prevalent with actors are fear of uncertainty and fear of loss, right?
Yeah.
Fear of loss of control, of the job, right? Of status, right? Of love,
Yeah.
right? And so when you're finding yourself kind of spinning out in all these what ifs, to pause and ask yourself this cut through question, which isn't my cut through question. It's from my mentor, Cheryl Paul. But I think it's a really great question to ask yourself. Okay, what is this thought protecting me from feeling?
Mm. Mm.
And then to drop down out of the headspace and into your body, into where your feelings live. And then you might ask yourself, once you're in that feeling place, okay, if I was talking to my best friend and she was feeling this way, what might I say to her in this moment?
Right.
Right. And then saying that, literally saying it or writing it. There's something that happens when we say things out loud or when we write them down, that pain and that inner wisdom is alchemized in a different way than when it just stays in your head.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's such great advice, because we're more prone to being kinder to others than to ourselves a lot of times. So saying that out loud and thinking about that this other person outside of you seems very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. And then turning that that reflection back on yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can see how all this, for somebody with anxiety, which that's my case, for example, that's very hard, because it seems easy in theory to do these things, but then you experience this anxiety, it seems overwhelming. And in my opinion, the easiest anxiety for actors to experience, or the one that I see the most, is audition anxiety and social anxiety in general. I know so many actors that are like very talented, but they're like terrible at like networking and talking to people and like having to talk before the audition. That's like the biggest fear. So
Yes.
what are your tips as a acting teacher and as a transformational coach for that?
So a couple things. When you find yourself kind of spinning out into these what ifs,
Mhm.
it's always and catch yourself, right? As soon as you notice yourself going into what if future, bring yourself back to your felt sensations in your body.
Mhm.
And what you can do to offer yourself just some compassion in the moment is place your non-dominant hand on your heart and your dominant hand on your belly.
Mhm.
And just breathe into those spaces. And there's something about that gentle, really easy action that you can basically do anywhere and no one's going to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
That is like giving yourself just a gentle hug, a gentle reminder that you are okay, you are safe in your body, right?
Yeah.
And that, you're enough, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, I think finding these grounding exercises that work for you, whether it's breathing, and there's many things that work that allow you to have tangible things with the physical world
Mm-hmm.
around you and with yourself. That is
Yeah. A
um
really a really easy breathing exercise that I love, that is great to do before an audition or before a networking event, is breathing in on a count of 2 and then breathing out on a count of 4. Right? And so just doing some nice easy breathing in on a count of 2 and breathing out on a count of 4. And what that does is when you inhale, your heart rate increases. And when you exhale, your heart rate decreases. So by elongating your exhalations, you're slowing your heart rate down.
oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense. And I like also the counting. It makes you focus on
Mhm.
counting instead of all the thoughts that are racing in your
Mhm.
mind. Mhm.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay, so tell us, if somebody wanted to work with you as a coach, how does that look like? What is the process like? What would a session look like?
Mm.
What is the whole process?
Yeah.
Is it just one coaching session? Do you have packages?
I do have packages. I currently offer a 10 coaching session package, as well as a 6 session coaching package, and as well as individual sessions. When you come into a coaching session with me, you're driving the agenda, right? So you should come in with 1 or 2 topics that you'd like coaching on. I work with a couple of modalities, but one of my the biggest modalities I work with is what's known as internal family systems, or
Mm.
IFS. Some
Mm.
people know it or might call it shadow work, and that's working with different parts of yourself, such as the inner critic, fear, the ego, the pleaser, the insecure part, right? All of these parts of ourselves that we sort of try to hide away, right?
Yeah.
Don't look in there,
Yeah.
right? Working with these different parts of the self, getting to know them better, not seeing them as enemies, but seeing them as actually as the protectors that they are, as actually they are your allies. So befriending these parts of yourself that so many of us push away, getting to know this part better, getting into conversation with it, which allows it to relax and ultimately transform.
Okay, so would you say that your work approach is also like radical acceptance, like accepting all the parts
Mm.
of you more than changing them?
Yeah, I think that anytime we're trying, there's a beautiful quote by Pema Chodron, the Buddhist monk, that I'm going to paraphrase. And that's the act of trying to change ourselves is actually an act of aggression.
Hmm.
So we have to love ourselves, and we have to actually love what we might even want to change,
Right.
right? And actually, by embracing it, right? Embracing the inner critic instead of saying, I hate you, inner critic, you're getting in my way. Embracing it is what allows it to soften,
Hmm.
is actually what allows it to transform.
Okay, so accepting and loving something doesn't mean I don't have to change it and it's okay
Yeah,
necessarily.
it's sort of like, you know what a Chinese finger trap is,
Hmm. Yes,
right? It's
yes.
like the more we pull to get out of a Chinese finger trap, the harder it is, right?
Right.
Whereas if we can relax into it and actually move forward,
Mm,
move towards it, then we're free of it,
right.
right? So it's the
Right.
same kind of principle.
That makes sense. Okay. I like that. And so if people wanted to see your work, follow you on social media, work with you, you have a website, right? Can you tell us all your
Yeah,
contact information?
yeah, sure. So you can find me on Instagram at Sara Koestner Coach. And my website is sarakestner.com. And you can find all the information there, my coaching packages, testimonials, reach out to contact me on that website.
Awesome. All right. And then before you go, I have three
Mhm.
short questions for you.
Sure.
The first one is, could you tell us three movies or TV shows that you recommend and you love?
Mm. Sure. Sex Education on
Mm,
Netflix. Such a fun show, funny, heartbreaking, really, really brave in like the sexual taboos that it looks at, and but has a really sweet heart at the center. I adore that show. Another show love that I just finished watching on Normal People,
okay.
which is an incredible love story that's just filled with longing and um, brought me back to like my teenage days in a lot of ways. It's
Uh-huh.
just a really beautiful story of longing that's beautifully acted and just one of those that just really gets you in the
Where is that
guts.
available? Is that on Netflix
That's
too?
on who that's on Hulu.
Okay.
Another show that I love that will probably really appeal to you and your audience is Call My Agent, which is a French show
Oh,
that's
okay.
available on Netflix. And it is it's a French show, so it's all in French, subtitled. Fantastic. It's funny. It's about an agent's office, and every episode they have on a different, really big French actor. Um,
Oh,
and it
okay.
goes through like all the trials and tribulations, all the craziness in the agent's office, and it's just such a fun show. It was one of the shows that when it ended, I was just absolutely heartbroken.
That
Like, no,
that
this
sounds
can't be the
amazing.
last one. It's fantastic. It's just, it's
Yeah.
funny. It's sad. You feel so connected to the characters. It's great.
I haven't heard of it. Is that a new show? Does it have several seasons?
It has like 3 or 4 seasons,
Oh,
and I think I was recommended it by a colleague of mine, and I started watching it and just immediately was fell in love with it.
that sounds fun.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. My next question is, can you tell us two books you would recommend?
Mm, yes. The Wisdom of Anxiety by Cheryl
Okay.
Paul.
Okay.
This book is a Bible for me. It's all about, oftentimes we see our anxiety as the enemy,
Hmm.
and it's really about transforming your relationship with your anxiety, with your sensitivity, right, with these parts of ourselves that the culture has told us our weaknesses are you know to be pushed away, and it's about really embracing them and honoring yourself. The other book is another book that I love that I've probably read 20 times, if not more. It's
Hmm.
completely filled with dog ears and underlines, and that's called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And it's a book really about the voice in your mind, and
Okay.
about how you are not the voice in your mind. You
Mm.
are actually the person who is watching, who is listening to the voice in your mind. One of the brilliant things he says in that book is, would you allow the person that's talking to you in your mind to talk to you like that if they were a real person?
Right.
How
Right.
long would you allow them to speak to you the way
Yeah.
that they speak to you?
Yeah. That's so true. Oh my God. I love that. Yes. Yes. Okay. All right. And my last question for you is, can you tell us one piece of advice you would give to a young actor?
Hmm. Yeah. To not be so over focused on acting that you abandon yourself.
Hmm. I love that. I haven't heard anybody give that advice, and it is so true.
Yeah.
So true. Okay. Thank you so much, Sarah. It was so great talking to you. And thank you
Great
for
talking
sharing
to you
all this
too.
wisdom with us.
Thank you. Great to be here. Great to talk with you too. Take care.
Hello again. I hope you truly enjoyed this episode, and I would really encourage you to take your time and maybe meditate if you do that, or just take a moment to yourself. Maybe listen to the episode again to really internalize everything that Sarah and I talked about. A lot of these things are easy to say, easy to hear, but they're definitely harder to follow. And some of these lessons, even though we can tell you many times, you will probably not learn until you fail at them several times. And it's okay. It's okay, but it's good if you take a moment to really let in everything that you just heard. This is going to be all for this week. As always, please follow The Actor's Vow on social media, on Instagram, TikTok, for more tips on acting. Also on Facebook and YouTube, you know that the interviews are there with video. Thank you so much for being here and for watching, and I will see you next Wednesday.